All right. Good morning. It's Monday, August 3rd. And this is Brenda Bruggeman with,
Hillary Frederick.
yeah. So, and we are talking here today a little about Hillary's fabulous work in the Bread Loaf Summer of Writing project. So I'm going to ask you, Hillary, a starting question, like say a little bit, like in general, like how, if you were going to explain to someone what this work was about or what you did this summer in a couple of sentences, what would you tell them?
Well, it started out with the idea of the physical body in the classroom and how that affects education, the teacher, and the students. And then it sort of expanded into the dualities of being both a teacher and a person.
Mm, okay, good. And that is, so I'm going to go straight to the question about polarity,
Mm.
because that was what you pulled together pieces that you worked on, rebrushed them and put them into like a 15-page portfolio together. And you titled that portfolio Polarity for the gathering. So I, of course, think that I get it, but I want to hear you say it. So tell us a little bit about how you came, the idea of polarity and using that word and the polarity that's in some of these pieces.
Well, I sat there for probably 15 minutes trying to figure out what word would best capture having essentially two different people that get squished together in teaching. And the first thing that I thought of was duplicity, but then that implies some sort of deception in it. And that's not quite right either, even though sometimes I feel like I'm hiding parts of myself. So my husband actually helped me come up with polarity to represent that there are two different poles and pushing them together sometimes and they come apart. Um, yeah, so just
Oh,
capturing two
yeah.
different things.
And so I was actually thinking, like, if we had more time together, I think I would really encourage you then to like kind of flip the polarity, because the polarity in the collection, and I think this is also nested in being a teacher for a long part, is we think about the polarity more as the things about our real life that we don't bring into the classroom. But it's actually, I think, in reverse, the, the yin and the yang is also true, that there's a lot about our classroom presence and persona that we don't take into our real lives um, as well, that we don't share out with other people, at the stories that we keep there. And I think that would be something that I would aim, to have you do more, another piece or two that might reflect on that other side, the things you don't tell people out in the world about your teacher.
Well, there are definitely some things that do translate. Like if I'm in public and there are teenagers acting a fool, then I fuss at them, even if I don't know them. My teacher authority comes out and I tell them to not act like that.
Yeah, you feel like you have, this is kind of still your extended responsibility to have them
Mhm.
behave in the world. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So when we met last week for the last group gathering together with the three of us there, and everyone touched for a little bit about what they might label as their favorite piece and write. So you went to the Ain't piece, which had a little bit longer title, its first version, and now every piece in the Polarity collection here has pretty much a single word title, which I want to ask about. But first I want to talk about the Ain't, the little Ain't piece. And what's special about that for you? And again, the kind of polarity that's in that little
Ain't is
story.
special because I was not allowed to say ain't when I was growing up. And I'm from the Appalachian region of Virginia in the mountains. And ain't is just so much a part of the culture there. Everybody uses it and they use it in all sorts of different ways, not just I ain't, but you ain't, they ain't, we ain't, and all things in between. And I was so interested in it. But my mom taught high school English and she was a stickler for standard English, would not let me say ain't. I always had to watch my words, and if I got in trouble she would assign me an essay instead of grounding me, which was a whole other issue. um, so because of that I worked really hard to hide my accent when I was growing up, and I tried to have that kind of TV accent, the Midwest. I went to college in Berea, Kentucky, and they are all about Appalachian culture there. They have Appalachian authors as professors. I got to take an Appalachian craft class where I learned how to weave baskets, and people said ain't. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was great because that's who they were. And because of my time at Berea, I felt empowered to say that word and to let my accent through anytime I wanted. So when I started teaching, I wanted to make sure that I let my students do that too, and that I didn't police their grammar and become some kind of grammar Nazi like some other people try to be.
Yeah.
So this piece is a conversation that I had with two of my sweet angels in my 6th period this past year. And they have very, very thick Kentucky accents. And we just had this great conversation about how ain't is okay to say.
Yeah. And that's what the piece plays with, you know, the ways that you can position and say it too in your conversation, and very effectively brings out like another accent. Just a little question in that piece, you know, I noticed that you actually don't name Berea College, you reference it. And I just say, I mean, I know that writers kind of think, well, maybe I should protect that place, but there's also a way in which not protecting, but shining the light on that, because anybody who's outside of your region there probably will wonder, what college is that? You know, and so if you put Berea in there, if you just mention it even once, then actually you become like a little PSA for Berea, and then people will probably slide over and look it up. And it is an amazing little place. Yeah. So for the longest time, I always bought my Christmas cards from them.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't do Christmas cards anymore, so.
Right. We could buy a broom.
Yeah. Okay. Don't do those. I don't do those anymore either. So, yeah. So in this portfolio, you also did a little exquisite thing that I loved: one-word titles, distilling everything down. And it reminded me, it's like channeling the great Montaigne as well. Not all, but most of his titles of like the 107 essays that still circulate, there are known to be more, but those that are kind of available begin with of, you know, something, or on something, and the longer one. So tell me about coming to those titles.
Because I settled on polarity for the title of the collection, I wanted everything to be that brief. And some of them already had obvious one-word titles. Like Sweep was originally Swept into the Broom Closet. That was easy to shorten. And so was Ain't. I think I originally had it as The Story of Ain't. And it just seems a little bit snappier to have the one-word title, and it also doesn't give away as much.
Yeah, which then makes the reader lean in right at the beginning. Right. So I think once in class I told you about what we call the mighty enthymeme from classical rhetoric. It's like a syllogism, but you've left off part of it, and it tends to make the reader lean in. They want to fill in the blanks immediately. And if you don't tell too much of it, like what is ain't about, right? Yeah, a little more eloquent there. And that word, the sort of brevity and compactness, again, very much characterizes your work.
Yes.
Overall, yeah. So I asked the question in one of our sessions, and I know that you wrote about this a little bit, but because the summer of writing was, and I had 2 groups, 6 of you, who really engaged the teaching and writing bridge thing, writing about themselves as teachers, growing out of the class from up on campus there. And so I always like to ask a question, because I love to manage it myself, even though, yes, and there have been times when I thought maybe I'd walk away from teaching or the academy overall. And I actually now take that to mean that I'm in the right place. If I'm questioning it always, right, a good place. But what are other things for you that, like the teacher self that you are and your strengths there, that you think you could be or do?
Well, I've always been interested in education somehow. Like I went through my phase in middle school where I was going to be an Egyptologist and go find mummies, but I don't actually like dirt or worms, so that didn't pan out. And originally, when I went to college, I was going to be a librarian, and I signed up for education as a backup because I'd have to go get my master's anyway for library science. And it wasn't until I was a junior in college that I decided, oh, I actually will be a teacher. I like it. Um, and that's when I kind of threw myself into it. Um, so I had a pretty rough year this year, um, even before the COVID shutdown. And I decided that just in case, I do like having a plan, I would start library science classes. So I'm working on my rank 1. And in Kentucky, it's usually 30 hours past your master's,
Yeah.
but not a doctorate. So it kind of tops out your pay scale. And then it would also give me the certification to be a school media specialist if I wanted to.
Yeah. So potentially even doing both and somehow blending
Right.
both. Yeah. Yeah. That's nice to have a plan. I could say one of my favorite books of all time is called Composing a Life. And Mary Catherine Bateson, who's the daughter of the famous anthropologist Margaret Mead. It's kind of an early feminist track. But that's basically what the book is about, is how, particularly she examined how women, using 5 different narratives, kind of keep this plan, like, and are open to recomposing their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a thing that we do. So speaking of composing and a life, I'd like to ask, so this is like you can sing, or you can just say, I guess I wasn't sure myself what to expect with this summer writing little tutorial experience that we did with Breadloaf, how that would work, especially because there were, some of you already knew, and there were actually some people I'd never met before that entered into each one of the 3 groups, so how that dynamic would work. I'm really pleasantly surprised how it turned out, but would you say a few things that seemed to, that came out of this experience for you?
Mm-hmm. So, of course, I was devastated that I couldn't be at Breadloaf in person. It was going to be a Santa Fe summer for me, and I was going to have a margarita in the courtyard as I took my classes. But I am thankful that they did the summer of writing so I could stay on track. I have everything very carefully planned. So I finished my master's with Breadloaf next summer, and then that December I finished my rank 1. And
Oh,
I wouldn't be able to finish it
yeah,
unless unless Breadloaf finishes next summer.
yeah.
So everything's very careful. But the project itself was so fun because I got to do the things that I was interested in, and I wasn't beholden to somebody else's curriculum where I may have really enjoyed the first 2 weeks and then the next few weeks were still good, but not what I was really interested in. And I really got to drive what happened. And it also gave me deadlines that I need to write, because if I don't have a purpose for writing, I tend to just put it off and I say, oh, I'll do that some other time. And then I don't.
Yeah, yeah, great. So purpose, deadlines, staying on track, utility, and yeah, bringing something together. Excellent. Well, I'm going to close this out there. I'm going to turn off the recording.